Well, this is going to be an update, and it's a huge topical area. And even though I've got a lot of slides, I'm going to go through them really quickly. This is what I'm going to be talking about, these technical, regulatory, and policy issues, and specifically what's happening at the legislature, at the PUC, at the governor's office, within some of the electric utilities, environmental and consumer groups, what's happening with the hyperscale industry, and I'm going to here to present to you what the CRES policy statement is on data centers, and perhaps what most important is what you can do if you decide that you'd like to engage in this topic. These are the topics. So as you can see, there's a whole lot of things here, and I'm just going to be rolling through a lot of them. And obviously can't spend too much time on any specific, but it's a very complex issue. It has a lot of downside and some opportunities for some upside as well, and I'll be talking about both. I'll start here with the last one, which is you probably have heard about the potential that this could be supercharging a nuclear industry renaissance. I'll talk a little bit about that. I'm going to describe politically what's going on within the governor's office, legislation, the Public Utilities Commission, and so forth. What legislative action does CRES recommend? So I'll be discussing that. And then what can you do? So I'm going to be coming back to this, but if this would be, I think, considered the bottom line of what it is that we are thinking needs to be done. I think that the legislature needs to hear from the people of the state of Colorado about their concerns about what the ramifications might be if we had kind of an open-ended system here in Colorado where data centers can just come in. I'm coming back to that because this is kind of the key reason that I'm here, is to present the CRES position on this. Very quickly, I came at this not because of any background in data centers. I apologize for that. But I do have background, as do many people in this audience, in the electric power sector. And it was through that lens that I learned about data centers, particular hyperscalers, and I'll be talking about what are hyperscalers as opposed to other data centers. And through the topic of hyperscalers, that very quickly gets you into artificial intelligence, because it's becoming something which is a much bigger fraction and growing fraction of what actually takes place in the data centers. The AI topic is actually more interesting than the electric powers, but I am not going to be getting into that. And this one too, the quantum experience. We could have seminars on that, but I'm not going to even talk about that tonight. I'm not going to be talking about AI. I'm just going to talk primarily about the electric power sector and its impact as a result of the hyperscalers. So this is the challenge. We've got as many of you know, we've got plans in this state that are embedded in our laws that we will be turning off a lot of coal-fired generation by the year 2030. By the end of 2030, they'll all be turned off, and in large part, they will be replaced by renewable energy and some gas. So the question is whether or not, with the advent of these big loads, whether or not the turning off of those coal-fired generating stations will be able to be accomplished. This is, I'll be talking about the status quo as it stands now and how that status quo needs to be changed. Many of you have probably heard about this, that every time you do a regular Google search, let's just call it 1 unit of energy. But if you do an AI search, it takes 10 units of energy. Some people think it's even more. It could be 15 units. This little thing in the middle, this little icon from Microsoft just appeared magically on my computer. It might have appeared magically on everybody's computer that's on that Microsoft suite. And it's the AI Copilot. I must admit, I find it to be pretty handy. I use it and I think, wow, okay, I'm using 10 times as much energy. Am I really not going to use 10 times? Well, okay. Now, you know, I don't know about you, but when ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago, I said, "Oh my God, this is incredible," and I used it and I said, "Wow, this is the new world." Well, this slide is to represent how large ChatGPT is in contrast to the other generative AI tools. This is an amazing thing in that you know, when it first came out in 2022. It was the most popular one, but within 1 week, it had 1 million users. It used it, and then like within a couple of years later, it's up to 200 million people are using this. So very quickly, when we talk about data centers, data centers break into like 4 broad categories. There's these enterprise, which are just like basically computer rooms and maybe a little bit larger. And there's these what they call the edge ones, which could be even in a downtown Denver, say, for example, that for companies that need high latency where they don't want to have a time gap. And then there's these co-locations, which are a bit larger. And then there's the hyperscales. The hyperscalers is what I'm going to be talking about. When we talk about data centers, I don't think anybody here, I don't have any need to sit there and talk about things other than the hyperscalers, because from an energy and environmental perspective, these smaller ones don't really make much of a difference. They've been around for decades. So these are what hyperscalers look like. And what they are massive facilities, and they're being used by big tech. They can include crypto mining. They don't all have to. And I'll be discussing crypto mining just briefly towards the end of the presentation. They are very large buildings, and they can be scaled up. Now, here's a picture that gives you an idea of what they would look like. And there's just for fun, I want to have you take a look at the fence around it. They've got a military scale security, you know, with razor wire fences and guards and all the rest. Notice the little tiny parking lot. The parking lot there is about the size of what you'd expect for maybe 2 or 3 Starbucks. You know, it's tiny. That shows you very few people work in these things. There's more guards than there are technicians that are working in these hyperscale data centers. Just a few facts. They're large. They use a lot of electric power. There's no real definition, legal definition for hyperscalers, but I read different things. But at a minimum, they would be using 25 megawatts. And that's enough roughly to power 35,000 homes. Sometimes they need dedicated power because they run 24/7, 365, and they cannot tolerate any time not operating because they lose tremendous amount of money, and they have backup generators, diesel. To test these diesels, you have to run them at least 50 hours a year. So there's going to be, you know, diesel just to ensure that they work. What happens inside a hyperscaler? A whole list of things here. Computer, they compute, they store, they network, they do all of these things. The one that's on everybody's mind is the artificial intelligence aspect. And this next slide is pretty interesting. Now, this one, I'm going to dwell just a little bit on this one, because as you see in 2022, in the green are traditional data centers. Of course, these traditional data centers have been around for decades, and they are for network services of various sorts, cloud services, and so forth. But in the blue is crypto. So crypto is there, but you can't even see the AI portion back in 2022. Look at the growth in terawatt hours that is expected just in the next year. There's got to be not just growth in the AI, but growth in the actual other functions inside of a data center. This one really struck me, which is the map of where data centers are located around the world. And the thing that's interesting about data centers is that they measure them not in square feet, but in megawatts. You know, so most commercial buildings, of course, are measured in square feet. but it's like really in megawatts. And you could see on this next little piece here is that Virginia, you see that big thing there in Virginia, we're going to get to that in a second. They've got 2,500 megawatts, and we in Colorado, of all of these, we have dozens of small data centers in the state of Colorado, and they add up to about 93 megawatts. But the QTS Aurora data center, which I'll be describing in a few minutes, is going to be consuming 177 megawatts. That's one facility. That's where my eyes really opened up. When I first learned that there's a building in Aurora that's 177 megawatts, that was when I said, oh, I need to find out about this. So in Virginia, why are they all there? I learned something about that Virginia thing as well. There's a lot of lessons learned there because the utility out there basically is saying no mas. You know, we cannot handle the electric load. There's a mismatch between the timing that these data centers want to bring on and how long it's going to take for the electric power infrastructure to be able to meet their demand. Okay, past Virginia, I'm just going to throw up some quick pictures. This is one in Las Vegas. It's nearly 500 megawatts, and it's running on renewable power. There are probably power purchase agreements. Here's another one in Reno. It's also running on renewable energy. This gets to the opportunity for renewable energy. If these data centers do things right, it could cause quite an expansion of renewables, which it has its own positives and some challenges as well. This is one that's been around for a long time. It's at a place called the Dalles, right on the Columbia River in Oregon. It's a massive hydro plant, and the data center is right there. The people in the town, of course, they like that data center, but it is using a quarter of their water. This one, if I were to show you the video, you would just be blown away, because this is what Elon Musk has done in Memphis, Tennessee, where he's using absolutely the most powerful generative computer chips, and it's huge. And there's another huge one that's on its way potentially for Colorado. It's called Prometheus, and this is first going to be up in Wyoming, but they are talking about bringing it into Fort Morgan and into Pueblo, then to Phoenix and Tucson. This is another great video that I would have liked to have shown you, but I'm not going to be able to. It's Daniel Yergin, which I'm sure many of you have heard of him. I put up his books here, and you know, he puts on a big conference in Houston every year, that it's attended like 8,000–10,000 people, and he talks about in this little video how everybody's talking about this particular topic at his meetings. A couple of years ago, nobody was even talking about this, and now it's like everybody's talking about it. There's another one. Many of you may remember this name. Ben Fowke. He was the CEO of Xcel Energy here, and now he's the interim CEO of American Electric Power. This is a very interesting little video clip because John Hickenlooper and Joe Manchin and others are interviewing him, and he's expressing a lot of concerns about data centers. I mean, on one hand, he wants them, but on the other hand, he's scared of them. And they're concerned about the resource adequacy. He's concerned about the early retirement of coal-fired generating stations, that if they were to happen according to the schedule, that there could be some resource adequacy concerns. So I wish I could show this to you, but that's what he's talking about there. When a hyperscaler is looking around the country, they're sending their people out across the country. They're just scouting out every potential power opportunity in the country. And there are certain things that they're looking for. I think right at the top, they're looking to see if there's available capacity on the electric power system to be able to supply them with the power needs that they have. They're looking for subsidies, and they're looking for network connectivity. And I'll talk about all of these things. They're looking for land, they're looking for water, they're looking for the workforce, and they're looking for supply chain issues. So on the power side, This is their key concern. It isn't even so much with the dollar amount, the cents per kilowatt hour. Of course, that's very important, but really, is there available transmission capacity? Is there capacity on the system? They would like very much. I think it's a genuine thing. I think they do want renewable energy, and so if they can get that, a lot of these big tech companies, they've made commitments. And they're actually making a lot of power purchase agreements to buy a lot of renewable energy. So they do want green electrons to be coming into their system. They are interested, as I mentioned, in rates. And they think that there might be some options somewhere where there's a lot of curtailment of perhaps wind or solar that they might even be able to put into batteries. And they're looking around. But they're also, and this is more important than I thought it would be, but they actually want subsidies. And they basically say, okay, if you don't give us subsidies here, well, then we'll just go to a state that will. And most states are. I think it's nearly 40 states are providing some form of subsidies to attract these data centers into the state. Colorado does not have a subsidy. And I'll mention that there was an effort in 2023 and 2024 to try to provide subsidies, but they didn't even come to a committee hearing, and I guess they decided that the optics of that just doesn't look good. So it didn't go to a vote. In Denver, there's a big data center that I'll be mentioning where the city of Denver, on their own volition, said they cobbled up a proposed subsidy of $9 million. Denver City Council started to ask questions about that. Really, do we really have to do that? Then the CORE, which is the name of the hyperscaler, said, okay, we'll come to Denver irrespective of the $9 million. This is really very, very important, which is like, is there already existing fiber optic connectivity into the area? And it turns out that Colorado is already pretty well situated in that regard. We have a lot of what they call dark fiber. You don't have to lay a lot of new fiber to come to Colorado. A lot of it is already there. So we are strategically located between the east and west coast. Now our strategic location is nothing like Virginia, because they've got cables that run across the Atlantic to Europe that are running right out of the data centers in Virginia. So obviously we're not a port area. We're not, but this is a pretty strategic location, which heretofore has been sort of overlooked in favor of other places like Chicago or Las Vegas. Dallas, and the other thing that they're very interested in is land, and they need at least a minimum of 100 acres to be able to operate, and they're in some level of competition for land with large industries. They are interested in what the price of land is. I put up this map that shows the level of price. It's an interesting thing, but these people are so wealthy that when you get into the price of these issues, it's not like a lot of other businesses. They could pay what they have to do. They are very interested though in infrastructure, roads, rails, sewer, airport access, etc. I found this one to be interesting. Just about a week ago, Biden directed the Department of Defense and the DOE to identify at least three places where they could site hyperscalers on federal land. Okay, I happen to be curious about this. I've got some history with the topic of Rocky Flats, and they own 1,300 acres out there. This is federal land. Not to suggest that they'll pick that, but it would potentially be an option. Water is a big topic, and I won't spend as much time as it deserves but there's two general ways to be able to cool a data center. One is with air conditioning, which uses a lot of electric power. The other one is to use a lot of water. Of course, to run the water, you have these chillers that also need a lot of electric power. And they're also looking for the workforce, but the workforce is primarily construction workers. Like, for example, this QTS operation that I'll tell you about, they hired about 1,000 people to build that place over a 2-year period. They look for other things too, but because it's not a high employment area, it's not as if you need a lot of skilled technicians in a workforce. They have supply chain challenges. I put this sort of as a thing which is endemic across the industrial economy in the United States. There's a lot of supply chain challenges. How long is it going to take you to be able to order a transformer? And that kind of thing is out there, but it's not a key locational issue. Now, I think this first piece is important, that public service company system peaks at 7,200 megawatts. So if you keep that 7,200 megawatts, that then puts some context around the size of these data centers. So I'll be getting more into that just a little bit, but Denver's load is about 500 megawatts, just to give you, an idea of context and scale. The key thing that we're looking at, as far as legislation is concerned, is the issue of the subsidies. And there's an economic development rate that was put into law back in 2018 by the Colorado legislature. And it has given it what I call a sweetheart economic development rate to these hyperscalers, where they come in, if they can prove to the PUC that they're getting a price that is just above the marginal cost, which is the cost of the last electron in, then they get a special rate. And that's in of itself a big lure, a big subsidy to provide an encouragement for data centers to come to Colorado. Let's see, moving on, I have to go quickly here through these things here. Is that Microsoft has this facility. They not a facility. They purchased 260 acres just south of DIA, and I like to joke that wasn't to build a theme park there. They're going to be building a big hyperscaler there, and just south of that is the QTS 177 megawatt. This is the one that really caught my eye and got me interested in this topic, because this is the first hyperscaler in Colorado. It's just south of DIA. A few facts about it: it cost $1 billion, 300,000 square feet, and keep in mind that 177 megawatts. That's probably about the size of Boulder. It would be a guess. One building using as much power as, say, Boulder. Haven't checked the numbers, but I'm probably not too far off. It's owned by Blackstone, not BlackRock, but much the same type of large capital venture. Now this is interesting. They paid $28.5 million to be able to build a very short line, transmission line from the nearest Xcel substation right into their plant. And it gives them the opportunity to expand all the way from 177 all the way up to 1,000 megawatts. Remember, Piesco's system peaks at 7,200, but they've got the land and they've got perhaps the interest in going all the way out to 1,000 megawatts. There's another one which is getting close to being built in North Denver. It's a 50 megawatt hyperscaler. That's pretty small compared to a lot of the other ones that are being proposed. So this is where it'd be located. It's right next to the Suncor refinery. Now here's what's happening at the Public Utilities Commission. For those of you who I don't know, I've worked there for 15 years, and so I've kind of got this regulatory background, and what's happening there is quite important. And one of the members of the CRES Policy Committee is here today, Ron Sinton, who is our expert witness in the intervention at the PUC. So what happened is back in October, they announced this massive proposal to build out the electric power infrastructure in Colorado, and they are prepared to spend at least $22 billion here in Colorado because of this, what they call a significant shift in the load forecast. I wish I had the time to go into this, but I won't, other than to say that 1,000 megawatts is equal to 1 million residential customers, and that they would need at least 3 gigawatts, that's 3,000 megawatts of renewable and firm dispatch just to be able to meet that. This is the presentation that was given by the chief executive officer of Xcel to their shareholders, and they go through what their principles are, and everything is fine here. Not really, except for the fact that they say benefits to other customers. They actually think that because of the new revenue that they're going to be bringing in, it's going to relieve pressure on the rest of the ratepayers. And so that's why I've highlighted this thing. They actually say to their shareholders that they think it's going to benefit the other customers. And I say this is highly doubtful, and I'll explain why. The load forecast is going from this historic thing for the past, say, 5 years at 0.7% compound average growth rate up to now 4%. And that's a huge increase. And what I find to be interesting is that in their plan, they attribute 72% of the peak load to be as a result of data centers. Well, of course, there's electric vehicles and there's heat pumps and there's other issues that are, and building electrification that is part of it. But 72% of that load growth is attributable to the data centers. And the issue is that nobody really knows, including public service company, whether these hyperscalers are really quite serious. They're just out there scouting and talking. There's no transparency in any of this. Now this is the big plan that is right now underway. It's called the Colorado Power Pathway. It's a $1.7 billion plan which I support, and it would be bringing in probably 90% of it would be coming in from renewable energy. Some of it would be natural gas. And so the problem is this: when they designed the Colorado Power Pathway, they did not anticipate artificial intelligence in data centers. They were using other metrics for their load forecast, population increased and that kind of thing. So what they put in a kind of a double circuit 345 kV line, which is only capable of so much renewable energy coming in. Now they're saying we need all this new electric power to come in. I don't think that they could put it on to the Colorado Power Pathway, and this is experiencing problems not so much in the building of the pathway, but like in contracts which were bid in at a certain price 2 years ago, but then with inflation and with supply chain issues, a lot of these contracts are not going anywhere, and the prices are going up. So I'm quite focused on this question, is whether or not that Colorado Power Pathway can accommodate the new renewable energy that we'd like to see if we have data centers coming in. My feeling is that it's very unlikely that there will be available transmission capacity to meet the needs of these data centers. They've got huge power requirements. Inside a data center, about 60% of the power is consumed in actually running the computers, the chips. About 40% is used to cool the air one way or another, either through air conditioning or paying for the electric power for the chillers. So these are some statements being made by authoritative voices as to what they anticipate the increase of electric power requirements is going to be in the United States over time. There's a lot of speculation because nobody seriously really knows. It reminds me of what they call irrational exuberance. You remember that? Milton Friedman said that years ago. And a lot of this might not happen. And if it doesn't happen, then what? Okay, and let's say we build the transmission system out, put on a lot of renewable energy, and then who's going to be holding the bag on that? And of course, the central question is that, most of our electric power in the United States is coming from fossil fuels. Now, in Colorado, we've made some great strides, and we're going to see something different. But we have in Colorado this climate roadmap, and we have goals by 2030 to really drop the amount of carbon from the electric power sector by a considerable amount, maybe 80% renewable energy by the year 2030. But if we accommodate these data centers coming in, how does that what does that portend for us to being able to meet our climate goals? And it's not just about the coal; it's also about natural gas, which I'll be getting into. So we have laws that were passed, signed by the governors, that gives us these carbon goals. And the scenario which could happen is that the utility comes in and says to the governor and to the PUC, we're very sorry. However, we have an obligation to serve these new loads. And we have to keep these coal-fired generating stations going and put on a lot more natural gas to be able to meet those loads, because of the time it's going to take to put on new transmission and new renewables is going to take us past the timeline that the data centers want. So my statement here is we have to ask the governor, who championed a lot of this, and the legislators, is this really what you want to do? You want to invite these data centers in and then have to basically rescind your carbon goals? That takes us down to Pueblo, Colorado, where we have these two units on the right, Comanche 1 and 2, they're being retired very early. Comanche 3 is scheduled to be going down December 31st of 2030. And the concern is that this is the largest carbon dioxide emitter in the state of Colorado. And they could say, look, we really don't want this to happen, but we have no choice. We have an obligation to serve. Well, that can be reversed. That kind of thinking can be stopped. This is the way, by the way, this is the way the Comanche plant looks like today. I've got the circle around the plant down in Pueblo. You can see it's surrounded by renewable energy. This is the epicenter of a lot of the renewable energy in Colorado at this point. It's serving the EVRAZ steel plant, the old Colorado Fuel and Iron steel plant. Now we're getting to the question of methane and natural gas and the carbon issues associated with data centers. They are looking to build small methane generators which can help their projects come online faster. Instead of waiting around for the utility to have to build the transmission and the renewables, they could just plop these things in. Now, there are issues with supply chain. You can't just snap your finger and you're going to have these generators, but it used to take about a year, or now it could be taking as much as 2 or 3 years before you put in an order and you could get these generators, because there's such a rush to be putting these in. What's interesting is that they could possibly put them in, and then if it turns out that they don't need as much power as they thought, they could actually start to sell that power as almost like independent power producers into the future. But by going with natural gas, they can move their projects faster, this is what it looks like. This is from this is the drill baby drill. I mean, you just go up north into Weld County, and you'll see this, and then you'll see that. You can see those little dots. And our new Secretary of Energy is a guy who's in the field service of providing services for the frackers. This is our incoming Secretary, CRES Wright. And this is his hometown, is in Denver, and this is what he does. If you go out west on I-70, you can't see this from the road, but it's just dotted with this is what has happened to the fracking operations on the western slope. Down in the Southern Ute Reservation, this is, you see all those little tiny white dots? Those are all pads. This is the kind of impact that these natural gas industry is having. They're even proposing to put up about 20 fracking sites out there in Aurora, next to the Aurora Reservoir, right next to all those houses. And so what we look at with the Permian Basin, this is, a little higher elevation. You go further out and it starts to look like this. Now, you may not be able to see this very well, but there's everything, where that you see little white on this map, those are all well pads. This thing stretches for 90 miles. This is the shale revolution, which has completely changed the whole energy map in the world, actually. So now I feel obligated, because I'm stuck on this issue of carbon capture, is that I've actually read that some of these people, the natural gas people, say, well, we're going to put these gas plants in, but we're going to retrofit them with carbon capture. So I have to put in this little joke saying, okay, hey, Alexa, just out of curiosity, how many natural gas plants are there worldwide that are fitted with carbon capture? 0. What is parasitic power? I wish you wouldn't have asked that question. You know, to be able to run a gas plant and to have it put in the electric power for the carbon capture, probably 20% parasitic power. What about nuclear? Well, okay, so this is the big rush. Everybody's getting all giddy about nuclear power now, okay, and of course a lot of it is being driven by this enthusiasm for artificial intelligence and data centers. I will mention that CRES has issued a policy statement on that, and I encourage you to go to the CRES website, and you could read that CRES has some very serious reservations about nuclear power for Colorado. Well, what about co-locating at existing nuclear reactors? You've probably heard about this, like at 3 Mile Island and so forth. And my question is sort of a joke. You know, would a utility seriously want to walk into the Public Utilities Commission and say, we want to build a nuclear reactor in Colorado? I think they'll think twice about that. Basically, they'd be laughed out of the room, because the PUC knows what the cost of nuclear power is, and it's just a no-go. So now everybody's talking about small modular reactors. Okay, well, we'll talk about that in a minute. This is what's happening at some reactors. There's one in Pennsylvania that Amazon wants to take about half the power from a big reactor. That's the data center there on the side, and it's a pre-existing one. This is the 3 Mile Island. There were two units. There's 4 cooling towers, but there's 2 units. One has been shut down since the 3 Mile Island accident. Another one was mothballed a few years ago. They want to take it out of mothball. It would cost $1 billion to take out of mothball, and then they would have a dedicated source. This is what Bill Gates and friends want to do up. They're actually clearing the land. They don't have a permit for it yet, but this is what they propose is a $4 billion, what they call a small modular reactor, a small reactor in Wyoming. Of course, Bill Gates can be, saying, I'm doing this for climate purposes. So he's going to, dedicate less than 1% of his wealth to be able to promote this as being a climate solution. And then he's going to go to you and I as the federal taxpayers to pay the rest. So he's up there at this groundbreaking ceremony. Now I'm going to get to the small modular reactors, and I'm closing in close to the end here. It's moving along. Small modular reactors, everybody's talking about that, right? Okay, wow. I mean, it's a dream come true for a data center. You don't have to mess with the utilities and the Public Utilities Commissions and environmental issues. You just go ahead and park a small modular reactor right underneath your data center. Oh, it all sounds good, except they have their own issues. Hey, Alexa, how many small nuclear reactors are there in the world? 3. Okay. Well, I'm going to back up for a second. You see that picture of a small modular reactor? There's nothing 21st century about that. It's just steel, and I mean, conceptually, the design isn't some kind of like breakthrough design. This could have been built decades ago by the nuclear industry. There's a problem with it. First of all, the radioactive waste that comes out of a small modular reactor is twice the amount for the megawatt hours that are produced. and it has to have a special kind of a nuclear fuel that right now is only made in Russia and Kazakhstan. Yeah, so like, oh, now we're going to have to spend billions of tax dollars to be able to pay people here in the United States to be able to make this special nuclear fuel. Water, again, I hate to give short shrift to it, but I will. But essentially, the thing to remember is that to run a coal-fired power plant or a gas-fired power plant takes a tremendous amount of water. In fact, the amount of water that is used to generate power for air conditioning of a data center is more than the amount of water that they would use if they just used a chiller inside of inside of the data center. Here's just a few of the statistics on it, but essentially they use a tremendous amount of water. And just in the interest of time, I'm just going to cruise through these things really quickly.
You can take your time.
Okay. Okay. I'll take a little bit more time on this water topic then. Essentially, the hyperscaler that they propose to build in North Denver would be cooled by water instead of through air conditioning, and so I'll show you some information about that. But here's the amount of water. For example, you know, in just 2 years, the projections for global artificial intelligence. That's my message to start to wind this down. Would use a lot of water. A little bit about renewables is that it's a sort of there's some opportunities here, and if you look at things sort of like optimistically and opportunities, there could be something there, but then you have to weigh that against the other side, and CRES is cognizant of these issues. The problem is that if people say, well, why don't they just use renewable energy? Well, as you all know, the amount of land area that is required for solar just does not work on a footprint of 150 megawatt hyperscaler. That just isn't there. So you could do it other ways. You get a power purchase agreement, but then the question is, who are you making that power purchase agreement with? Is it going to be here in Colorado? Well, if so, that's better than having one that you've signed in Texas, because if something happened to that hyperscaler and they are no longer using it as much as they first thought they would because quantum computing has come in, or the efficiency of the chips, which is a whole other issue, has improved from how it is now, then you will at least have that renewable energy that's now on the system that maybe would not be there if it were not for the rules that require these hyperscalers to put up renewable energy. It's a complicated issue, and it takes more time than I have at this moment to get into. But they're starting to integrate batteries into this, and batteries are very expensive, and right now although the lithium ions are great, they're only for about 4 hours, but you could use utility energy on off-peak periods and so forth, and store that energy and use it. There's some opportunity for demand management of these data centers. So it's not that you really can't use renewable energy. It's just tricky, So as far as the electric bills, a lot of people are very focused on, okay, what is this going to do to the environment? And I already gave you some of that information about coal and gas and the air pollution, the greenhouse gases and so forth. But what about the ratepayers? It's very difficult to be able to get a real handle on this, because we don't really even know if this is even going to come to fruition, and then what is actually going to be the rate increase, and is the rate increase going to be within a range that people can handle? Because everybody loves, like we are right now, to enjoy the benefits, because everything we're doing right here is going through a data center. I mean, our phones and everything. So even if the rates did go up, that would hurt the low-income people for sure. But they're getting hit by other things: wildfire, insurance issues that Excel has to pay. All kinds of things. Like they're going to try to really increase the the modernization of our distribution system here in Colorado. We're talking billions of dollars. But the question of the impact of data centers on rates is one that you read and I hear a lot of things, including some people, let's say from the energy office or from the governor's office, who are saying, no, this could be a good thing because we're going to be bringing in more revenue because they'll be burning, they'll be paying electric bills for power that is being used at night, so it makes the whole utility system more efficient. So you kind of hear that. But I figured the way to settle this in this presentation is to basically say, again, I worked at the Public Utilities Commission for years, and I saw a lot of the rate hikes. And there's these formal official notices to the customers as to why we're increasing our rates. So I figured, okay, I'll put this information in this presentation. This is what they say to justify the rate case. They say the base rate revenue consists of recovery of costs associated with capital investments in the electric system. Yep, absolutely. Then they say, okay, the increase in rate-based revenue is driven by investments in the distribution and transmission system and in technology, which are in turn driven by the necessary replacement of aging equipment, the need to support the safety and reliability of the system, population growth, new service requests, underline new service requests, like as in hyperscalers, and capacity upgrades due to increasing demand. So they admit every time that they ask for a rate case, they're doing this because they have to, because of these factors. Next to my last slide here is crypto. People always want to know about crypto. And so as I showed you in an earlier slide, it's a good portion. It's about 20% on average across the country is being dedicated to cryptocurrency. But there's a very interesting thing, because Bitcoin is the largest one, but the second largest one is a company called Ethereum. Well, Ethereum has a different way of being able to validate those Bitcoins. It's called a consensus mechanism. When I first read this, I was blown away. I said, I've never heard of anything that has reduced the energy cost by 99%, and they've done it. And now, whether or not the other cryptos go into that method of validating the cryptocurrency, I don't know. But here's my last little piece on the crypto. Guess who else is in the business now? Yep. This guy he's already made $7 billion in just a matter of a few months because of his entry into this. And so he's there with these guys. Okay, these are the tech bros. We'll call them the tech bros. Some people call them the Magnificent Seven. Okay, the Magnificent Seven are these companies here. Now, you could see what their returns are on that chart. The Magnificent Seven is far outperforming all the other ones in the Standard & Poor's. And these are the largest companies in the world. Well, you could see who's in there. Amazon is the biggest, like that. You know, there's Apple, you see Alphabet, you see Microsoft, etc. Now, essentially, and these are the most profitable companies. The dark blue are the technology companies. They have a market capitalization. The tech bros have a market capitalization that's twice the size of the oil and gas industry worldwide. Twice as much as oil and gas. That's how big they are. And as you all have noticed, they've essentially taken over the administration. So that's happening there. Here's the guys that were on the stage yesterday. Jeff, Bill wasn't on the stage. I was surprised. Mark was there, Sam was there, Elon was there, and a whole bunch of others. These are the ones that are the real movers and shakers. And these are the semiconductor companies like NVIDIA. Now, this is a quick slide. It shows the 12th wealthiest people in the world. And I show you the arrow. They're all technology except for one that's consumer. and one that's diversified. So these guys are much bigger than oil and gas. And so finally, here's what's needed. We need to look at who the players are: the governor's office, the PUC, the legislature, the economic development boosters, the environmentalists, and the electric utilities. We need to understand what their incentives, their motivations are, what their strategies are, and how much power they actually have. The kingpin on this is the governor, because the governor has the ability to be able to tell any legislator that he does or does not want legislation on this topic. And so, then that brings in the Colorado Energy Office, which intervenes at the Public Utilities Commission. The PUC, again, where I worked for years, they are not policy players. They're not telling legislators what they want. They're kind of like subsidiary to the laws of the utility laws. This is where the action happens, at the legislature. And at the smoke-filled room, which is the negotiating table. Who is at the table, who's not? The governor is in that first chair, and it's like, okay, what is his take on this? So we need to find out, what is planned. We don't even know. It's like a lot of there's no real transparency in this, so this is the year where there's a big budget shortfall. And the legislature will probably not want to give tax subsidies, but we're asking them to repeal this sweetheart economic development rate, and I don't know where that might go. So our position statement, I actually showed you a little bit earlier. In the interest of time, we're basically looking for some guardrails. We want renewable energy to be the supply source. We want some protection in case things go south. And so we encourage our decision makers to take early action on this. Basically, this is the bottom line. Repeal the subsidy on the sweetheart economic development rate. Don't give them any subsidies. These billionaires do not need anything. Why should we be bringing them in and inviting this type of situation to come back and haunt us? What you can do is you can help us build a coalition effort. We're attempting to do that, but right now people have been a little quiet, and I think that CRES in particular has been a little bit in front of the curve of concern on this particular topic. But I think that within the next few weeks, there's going to be some legislation that's going to drop, and we'll see kind of where the parties stand. These are the things that you can do, and I'm going to end it with this statement, which is one of my favorites, which was reminded by something that I saw from Kirsten, which is absolutely true. Just a few people. We don't need to have 100,000 people get behind any concerns about data centers. We just need to have some articulate, strong, willing people to get in there and get some things done. So, thank you very much. I want to thank Kirsten. I want to thank Martin for your help. Thank you. It's 8:15. We've got a little bit of time. Dave.
What are the chances of enacting laws or regulations that would force the hyperscalers and billionaires who are going to invest in all these plants to require them to provide their own generation and pay for their own generation, even if it's administered by Xcel Energy or investor-owned utilities?
Okay, so that's a very good question, which is like, what's the chances that we could make these requirements happen, that they put up their own generation, or they do renewables? This is the question of the hour, really. And it depends on, in large part, it depends on our governor. The governor just has to signal what he wants, because if he sees something coming up from some progressive legislator, he just has to tell that progressive legislator, you could beat your head against the wall, but I'm not going to sign anything, even if it passes. I'm just going to veto it. And remember, I worked for 2 governors, so I know which way the doors swing. and they swing in favor of the governor. So, but to your question, Dave, the hyperscalers, they're not so eager that they have to come to Colorado. If the roadblocks are coming up, they say, fine, we're going to North Dakota. They don't have to be here for big strategic reasons. They want to be here so that they could put it on the cover of their annual report, you know, a map of Colorado and the sun and green electrons, but they don't have like a necessity. So if we ask too much, they'll go away. Another question? Yes, sir.
Yes. Beyond the purchasing of the power, what financial incentives do hyperscalers bring? Because you said there's not many employees, not many, long-term to construct the projects.
Perfect question. So the question is, what do they bring to the community? They bring a lot to the local jurisdictions. They essentially pay tremendous amount of tax to the local jurisdictions. And so that is part of the big reason why there has been proposed incentives. Let's say that Adams County would put up $10 million to say, you could come in and, because they know that over time, in a matter of a few years, they'll more than get that $10 million. And so there's tremendous, and of course, citizens want nothing more than to pay less taxes. And so if they know there's a new revenue source that's coming in to their local jurisdiction to pay for all the public needs that they have, they're happy with that, especially because the cost is then spread across all the ratepayers across the state. It's not going to really necessarily affect their rates in a way that they think would be worse than the benefit that they get from their potential tax reduction. Yes?
Is there any existing policies that other states or organizations have developed that's helpful to ensure there's a greater benefit to the energy
Yes.
growth?
Yeah. I wish that I had a lot more time to build this, like if I had a 4-hour presentation, because I would definitely put in a response to your question, like, are there other jurisdictions that can teach us and show us the way? Interestingly enough, Ohio is the example. The United States' largest electric utility, American Electric Power. They've got more transmission than any other utility in the U.S. They are freaked out by the data centers who are making announcements that they want to come to Ohio. So they've come up and they've teamed up. The electric utility has teamed up with the consumer advocates and the environmental advocates and say, here's the conditions that if you're to build a hyperscaler in Ohio, you have to pay upfront 85% of what you think is going to be the cost of the additional infrastructure. So that's Ohio. That's Republican Ohio. Okay, that says, enough is enough. We can't handle this thing, and we sure don't want our ratepayers to be stuck with essentially stranded assets. That could happen. And we in Colorado, we've been through boom and bust before on every level imaginable. And so we should have learned by this point in time how to anticipate what could happen and to build in an insurance policy. Yes, sir.
I kind of work actually in the data center industry, but more in traditional high-performance computing. But I'm kind of curious on like the idea of like co-locating renewable energy with data centers and how that maybe can be better encouraged down the line. Like I've seen some discussions say tying that into like power demand management schemes in terms of like
Yes.
navigating the actual power consumption of the data center that like predicts and forecasts the production from solar or wind and aligns their power use with that. Has any useful discussions happen in the space on the energy side of the equation and making that a reality?
I'm really happy that you're here and have the experience of actually working in that sector. And there's just tremendous opportunities that I read about all the time of efficiencies, of really smart energy management, even cooling the chips directly instead of like cooling the air that's been heated by the chips. All that kind of stuff is underway. But at the same time, the chips are using for artificial intelligence uses 4, 5, 6, 7 times as much energy for the computation than the old school chips. So the industry, I don't view the industry as being as kind of ugly as the oil and gas industry, because I think that the industry actually wants to do a lot of the things that I've been talking about. I think they want to use renewable energy, but there's a they actually, it's going to take time for a lot of these advancements that I read about. I read a lot of the exciting things that are happening in the chip industry and in energy management. So it's not a black and white situation with hyperscalers, but in the short term, it is pretty black and white. I mean, they cannot, in my view, come to Colorado and expect that we're supposed to accommodate to them and without the necessary guardrails. So the question is, would we rather have them come to Colorado knowing that our electric power system is going to be one of the cleanest in the country, or just chip it out to Wyoming or Texas where we know what's going to happen? That's a perfectly valid question. And, carbon dioxide's global. And so, I personally don't think that we should say, well, we would rather have them here than in Wyoming because we have a clean grid. Because I think in the scheme of things, the clean grid issue, Colorado is probably 1/2 of 1% of global carbon dioxide. And so like we could say, we'd rather have them here because we won't be contributing as much. They're already going to Texas. I mean, in Wyoming and West Virginia, North Dakota. They're going everywhere they possibly can find the power. That's a good question. I've struggled with that, and a lot of people have asked that very same question. It's a good one. Randy.
My name's Randy. Marty, when we talk about data centers, and this is something that frankly came to my mind as we listened to you talk. I worked for Excel for a lot of years. Okay, I retired a couple of years ago. I was involved in a lot of their planning, and it was pretty clear we knew how to get to about 80%. And therefore everybody signed up. Yeah, that sounds great. They'll sign up for clean energy by 30, and this by 50, and everything's wonderful. In the last 2 years, the forecast for demand. To give you an example, the new distribution service plan, which does not include data centers, has said that in 2050, Xcel's now forecasting a 5-fold increase in power. Now you throw all the data centers of it on top of that, all right? That's got to be generated. And I get concerned, is our basic assumptions that, oh yeah, we're here, it's all good, we got the green energy, actually valid anymore? When you start looking at these changes in forecasted future demand, because frankly, 5 times is a lot. And that's just to handle electrification and all the rest of the things, decarbonization, before you even get to these new ones coming on. So is this a symptom of a bigger problem and we're not in as good a shape as we think we are?
Well, thank you, Randy. I'm going to jump in a little bit because the things that are facing the Public Utilities Commission in terms of the demands on that public service company is facing, the Marshall Fire, the lawsuits, the wildfire, the distribution system, the data centers. The data centers, as you saw in that one slide, is representative of 72% by their own admission. So these other things are large, and this issue is not just facing us here in Colorado. This is a national thing. Like when the electric utilities first had to accommodate their load growth to accommodate air conditioning in the 50s, the demand went straight up, and then it leveled out. And some people are saying, well, this is just like our air conditioning experience. We're just going to have a new, and everybody is enjoying, and data centers are now part of the reality of our modern world. And there really is no like peeling it back. So then it does come down to where do they go? Now, basically, Singapore said no for 4 more years. Ireland said no for 3 years. The Netherlands said no for 2 years. Virginia is just starting to say, no, we can't handle it anymore. But Texas, yeah, come on in. And you know, you would think that you would want to site these in really cool spaces because of the cooling problems. They're all going into Phoenix and Las Vegas and Reno. You saw that. So that's not the issue. The issue is like, is there power? And then the utilities, I didn't mention this, the utilities actually do like more investment because that's how they make their money. It's called rate of return on rate base. And so in Colorado, for example, the Public Utilities Commission says, okay, we will give you a 9.3% average return on your investments. So they want to make the investments on generation and transmission because that's the way they make their money. So they're kind of like a split screen as to what to do. It's like, yes, we'll try to do that, but it's going to take time. We have time for... Okay, great. You did have another question. Yes.
Yeah, I can talk about lots of things. I think maybe 2 things come to mind first. One is maybe just a comment on like kind of like I'd be curious on the opportunity perhaps for like a power use efficiency metric of a unit data center
Yes.
profession on like measuring the efficiency of data centers.
Oh yeah.
And like maybe enforcing some like maximal like PUE
Yes.
ratio that they might be held accountable to. But second to just like maybe like more innovative solutions that I think maybe could be explored is I think of like the Lumi supercomputer in Finland that actually uses the waste heat to like power heat generation in like nearby cities for like I forget the system's called.
It's called distributed power, or just district heating.
District heating.
Yeah.
And so like where could maybe some of those types of I'm not sure we're quite as old as Finland, but like there's still probably some opportunities for these sub-communities
Right.
to benefit such a way. And I know we look at ours in Wyoming, for multiple reasons that I'm not totally sure, but nonetheless, like maybe down the line there'd be some benefit for communities that co-locate with data centers to actually use it. We see it in a meaningful way.
Good questions. And you've raised some good things because actually when you look at the power utilization efficiency, it's called a PUE. The PUE, when you look at that over the past couple of decades, it used to be like 2.7 or something, and now it's down to 1.1. I mean, the efficiency has really improved. And they may have reached the point where they're not going to be able to do too much more. But the advances that have happened are pretty amazing. Now, as far as district heating is concerned, you'd want to probably be in an urban area because the temperatures, and you know this better than I because you're in the industry, is that it's not very high temperature. It's like 40, 50 degrees that you get in the exhaust, and that's not enough to, certainly not enough to run any generators for combined heating and power, but it can be used for district heating. Denver has a district heating system that's 75 years old, but most cities are not building a district heating. But your point is something which I look at and I'm encouraged by. I think that these data centers actually do want to do the right thing. It's a challenge because a good 60% of the cost to run a hyperscaler is their electric power cost. So they've got every reason and every incentive to be able to bring that price down. But there are also limits as to how they can do that. More questions? Let's see here. Well, maybe there aren't more questions. This is good. Hey, thank you so much for being here this evening on this cold night. And you know, a lot more discussions are going to be happening over the weeks and months and years to come on this. It's a huge issue. I just scratched the surface, and I look forward to the opportunity for you all, particularly those who are here from the Boulder area, to really start to network, get to know each other, and help Kirsten bring the CRES chapter here back to life. So thanks again for everything.